Chery just built a gasoline engine that turns 48.57% of its fuel into real power. That's higher than anything Toyota, Honda, or Volkswagen has ever put in a car. And this isn't a trophy you can ignore. The engine you drive decides how much of your paycheck disappears at the pump for the next 10 years. Burn less fuel for the same drive, and that's money back in your pocket. So how did a brand people were laughing at 10 years ago beat the number the best engineers on Earth spent decades chasing? And can you actually buy it? Or is it just a viral headline? For years, the most efficient engine money could buy sat around 41%, and it wore a Toyota badge. Chery walked in and posted 48.57 on the same pump gas you already use. The engine everyone said was dead just beat the one everybody trusts. Start with what that number even is. Thermal efficiency is the slice of your fuel that turns into real power. The rest leaks away as heat, out the tailpipe, into the coolant, gone. For most of the last 100 years, engines were bad at this. A normal gasoline engine turned somewhere between 38 and 45% of the fuel you paid for into motion. The rest you bought to warm up the sky. And this number crawls. Dragging the industry from 30% up to 40% took engineers close to 30 years. 30 years for 10 points. That's how vicious this fight is. Every single percent is earned the hard way. So when Toyota got its hybrid engines to around 41%, that was the summit. That's the engine in a Corolla hybrid, a Camry hybrid, the cars people trust with 300,000 miles on the clock. Honda's best lands near 41 too. Volkswagen's most efficient gas engine stops around 41 as well. That was the ceiling nobody could break. Chery didn't break the ceiling, Chery jumped clean over it. 48.57%. In an industry where 1 point is front page news, Chery didn't win by 1 point, it won by 7. So what do 7 points do for you? Picture the same trip, the same tank. In a 41% engine, a big share of that gas is just heating the road as you drive. In Chery's engine, more of every gallon actually pushes you forward. Same fuel, more distance. Or flip it. Fewer stops at the pump for the exact same driving you already do every week. And this isn't some lab toy that makes no power and dies on a hill. Chery built it for real hybrids and range extenders, a plain engine that makes power with a battery that helps, the kind of car a family drives to work and school. I'll be honest with you, when I first saw the number, I called it marketing. Chinese brand, big round claim, I've been burned by hype, and so have you. So I went digging. The number holds. Chery ran it on a test bench and put it on the stand at the Beijing Auto Show this year, not just in a press release. 48.57 is real. So the fight stops being whether Chery beat Toyota. That's settled. The real question is how. How does a brand most people wrote off as cheap and forgettable beat engine makers with a 50-year head start? It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen by luck. It started with one stubborn decision Chery made back when nobody was paying attention. Here's the part that should sting for the old guard in Japan and Germany. Chery didn't trip over this number by luck. It's been building its own engines since 1999. That's 26 years of doing the exact thing every expert said Chinese brands couldn't do. Build a real motor from scratch, instead of bolting in somebody else's and slapping a badge on top. And for most of those 26 years, nobody outside China cared. Say the name Chery to a car guy 10 years ago and you'd get a smirk. It was the cheap brand, the budget badge, the car you bought when you couldn't stretch to a real one. Fair or not, that's the reputation it carried for a long time. So how does the brand people wrote off end up holding the best number on the planet? Because while everyone was busy laughing, Chery kept calling itself an engine company and spending like one, not a slogan, a habit, decades of it, quietly, while the badges everybody trusted sat comfortable at the top and stopped sprinting. Then it got loud, fast. In September of 2025, Chery fired this engine up for the first time in its own lab at the Longshan Test Center and clocked the number. By that October, they put it on stage in front of the whole industry and dared anyone to match it. No one has. Think about what that does to the car you'll shop for next. For your whole driving life, the smart money move was simple. Want an engine that sips fuel and runs forever? Buy Japanese. That was the rule. That was the safe answer at every dealership. And in one shot, the brand nobody recommended just posted a number the safe answer can't touch. That's the twist that should stop you cold. A badge owned the word efficient for a quarter of a century. Toyota didn't just make good engines, it set the ceiling, and everyone else measured themselves against it. Now the most efficient one in the world wears a badge people used to joke about. The teacher got outscored by the kid in the back row. But posting the number is the easy part to say, and the impossible part to do. Anybody can claim 48.57. Chery had to actually pull it off inside a real engine. using tricks that most engine makers looked at and walked away from. And that's where this gets genuinely strange, because the way they did it breaks a rule most people think an engine can't break. Here's the rule most people think an engine can't break. In a normal engine, the squeeze and the push are the same size. The piston squeezes the fuel and air, it burns, and it pushes the piston back down the exact same distance it went up. Fair trade. But there's a problem hiding in that trade. When the push ends, the burnt gas is still hot and still has pressure left in it, and you just throw it out the tailpipe. That leftover heat is money you already paid for, blowing straight out the back. So Chery's engineers asked a simple question. What if the push was bigger than the squeeze? What if you let the piston travel farther on the way down, so the engine wrings out that leftover pressure before it escapes? That idea has a name. It's called a Miller cycle, an engine that expands more than it compresses, and Chery pushed it to a level nobody's matched. They built what's called a 26-to-1 expansion ratio, meaning the push stroke pulls 26 times more room out of the burn than the starting point. That's not a small tweak over a normal engine. That's an enormous jump. And it's the single biggest reason this thing hits its number. But you can't just make a piston travel farther by wishing. The old way to change how far a piston moves needs parts that would tear a normal engine apart. So Chery built a new bit of machinery to do it, and this is the part that made even the engineers go quiet. They call it a dual-curve, triple-link mechanism. Strip the fancy name off it, and here's what it is. Instead of the piston connecting to the crankshaft with one straight rod like every engine you've ever seen, it connects through a set of jointed links that bend the motion. So the piston can take a short trip up to squeeze, then a long trip down to push. Different lengths, same engine, on every stroke. If that sounds familiar, it should. Honda showed a concept a while back that chased the same idea. A link setup that lets the strokes run different lengths. It's brutally hard to build and make last, which is why you don't see it in the car in your driveway. Chery is one of the first to actually pull it off in an engine headed for real production. That's the leap. Not the theory's old. Making it survive is the hard part, and that's what they cracked. Then they stacked more on top. They pump a big slug of the burnt exhaust back into the engine on purpose. Around 35% of it, a trick called exhaust recirculation. Sounds backwards, feeding waste back in. But it cools the burn and stops fuel from getting wasted. So more of every drop does real work. And they coat the inside of the engine with a heat-trapping layer, so the warmth from the burn stays where it can push the piston instead of bleeding into the metal and vanishing. So picture all of that working at once. A push bigger than the squeeze, a brand new joint that makes it possible, waste gas recycled to cool things down, a coating that hoards the heat. Every one of those is a few tenths of a percent, and a few tenths is a war in this world. Chery didn't win with one magic part. It won by stacking a pile of hard, boring, expensive fixes that everyone knew about, and almost nobody bothered to do all at once. And here's what that stack of tricks buys you, the person shopping for a car. Every one of those fixes exists for one reason: burn less fuel to go the same distance. That's it, that's the whole point. When you fill up less often for the exact same commute, that's this engineering showing up in your bank account. Not on a spec sheet you'll never read, but building one perfect engine on a lab bench and building it 1,000,000 times without it falling apart are two different planets. This is where most of these miracle numbers quietly die. So the real question is whether Chery could actually make this thing over and over and put it in a car you can buy. And the scale of what they threw at that problem is honestly hard to believe. So how do you take an engine full of tricks that most companies were too scared to build and make it work not once, but every single time? You throw an absurd amount of money, people, and patience at it, and the numbers Chery spent here are the part almost nobody talks about. Start with the money. Chery poured more than 3 billion yuan into developing this one engine family. Not the whole company, not a car lineup, one engine. That's the kind of budget you'd expect behind a fighter jet, aimed at the thing sitting under a hood. And where did it go? Into people, mostly. Over 500 engineers worked on this. 500. Picture a whole building full of some of the sharpest minds in the field, and every one of them getting up in the morning to squeeze another 0.1% out of one motor. Out of that grind came more than 200 patents, most of them for brand new ideas nobody had filed before. That's not copying anyone. That's writing the rulebook other people will be forced to copy later. Then there's the part that made me sit up. Chery leaned hard on artificial intelligence to design the burn itself. Instead of building a part, testing it, breaking it, and starting over the slow way, they ran the whole thing through computer simulations that try thousands of shapes and settings faster than any human team ever could. The AI hunts for the perfect design, and the engineers build the winner. That's how you crack a problem this hard in years instead of decades. But here's the line that should end the argument about whether this thing is real. Chery ran this engine on a test bench for more than 50,000 hours before it ever went near a car you could buy. Sit with that number, 50,000 hours. If you ran an engine non-stop, day and night, without ever shutting it off, that's almost 6 years of running. 6 years of one engine grinding away on a stand, while engineers watched every reading, waiting for it to fail so they could fix whatever broke. That's not a company chasing a headline. That's a company terrified of shipping something that dies in your driveway. And that's exactly the fear that should be on your mind as a buyer. A big efficiency number means nothing if the engine grenades itself at 90,000 miles and hands you a repair bill bigger than the car. 50,000 hours of torture testing is Chery answering that fear before you even ask it. So the engineering is real, the durability work is real, the money is real. Everything checks out on the bench, which means the story should be over. Chery wins, roll credits. Except it isn't over, because there's a catch buried in that 48.57 number that the headlines conveniently skip. And once you understand it, you'll look at every efficiency claim from every brand a little differently. Here's the honest part. The hype videos skip. That 48.57% is a peak. It's the best the engine ever does at one perfect sweet spot, under just the right load. It's not the number you get every second you drive. Nobody's engine hits its top figure all the time, and Chery's doesn't either. Roll through traffic, sit at a light, floor it up a ramp, and the real-world average drops below that headline. That's true for every engine ever built, and it's true for this one. So does that make the number a cheat? No. But you deserve to know what it is before you fall for a thumbnail. It's a peak measured at the engine's best moment, and Chery says so in its own fine print, even when the internet doesn't. And here's the turn that makes it smarter, not weaker. There's a reason Chery built this for hybrids and range extenders instead of a plain gas car. In a hybrid, a battery and an electric motor do the messy work. The stop and go, the crawling, the hard launches, all the stuff that drags an engine off its sweet spot. That frees the gas engine to spend most of its time right where it's happiest, near that peak. So the hybrid isn't hiding the number. The hybrid is how you actually get close to it on a real road. Smart, not sneaky. Now, before someone in the comments beats me to it, yes, there are already engines that touch 50%. Even higher in a lab, but there's a giant catch on those. They only hit 50 as a generator, a motor bolted down at one fixed speed with one job, making electricity for a battery. It never touches your wheels, it can't drive the car by itself. Lock any engine to one perfect speed and efficiency climbs, sure, but then you've built a power plant, not a car engine. That's what makes Chery's number land differently. This is an engine that can actually drive a car, stretch across real speeds, and still post 48.57 at its peak. Among engines that do a real car's job, that's the record, not a generator trick, a working engine. So is it just a marketing gimmick? Some folks say thermal efficiency gets treated like the only number that matters when it isn't, and they've got a point. An engine also has to be smooth, quiet, cheap to fix, and tough for years. A big efficiency figure alone doesn't make a great car, that's fair. But this isn't a brand faking a spec on paper. Chery backed it with the patents, the bench hours, and the hardware. The number's real. The only question left is how much of it reaches your driveway. And that's the part that flips this from a science headline into your actual next car. Because this engine isn't a concept sitting behind glass. It's already bolted into a car with a price, on sale right now. And that price is where this gets very interesting for you. This is where a lot of videos get sloppy, so let's separate the record from the showroom. The 48.57% engine is real as a Chery breakthrough. But the public Tiggo 9 CDM you can point to right now is not clearly that exact record engine sitting in a dealership. The Tiggo 9 CDM uses Chery's hybrid system with a 1.5-liter turbo engine rated at 44.5% thermal efficiency. That is not the headline number, but don't mistake that for bad news. 44.5 is still a serious number. Toyota's best hybrid gas engines sit around 41%, and that number helped build the most trusted hybrid reputation on Earth. So even Chery's current showroom hardware is already playing above the old benchmark. And the more important number for you is not the trophy number, it's the fuel number. Chery's Tiggo 9 CDM claims fuel use as low as 4 liters per 100 kilometers when the battery is depleted. In plain English, that means even after the plug-in battery is no longer doing the easy work, the gas engine is still trying to sip fuel instead of burn through your paycheck. Now, don't hear that wrong. 4 liters per 100 kilometers is a test cycle claim. Real life is rougher. Traffic, heat, hills, speed, tire pressure, how often you charge, and how heavy your foot is all change the result. But even with that warning, the direction is clear. Chery is not just chasing a laboratory record, it is building production hybrids around the same idea. Make the gas engine work less often. And when it does work, make it waste less. Then comes the price. In China, the Tiggo 9 CDM launched around 165,900 yuan. That put a large plug-in hybrid SUV into mainstream money territory, not some million-dollar concept car fantasy. And that's the part the old guard should take seriously. A record in a glass case is easy to ignore. A family SUV with a real price is not. But if you are outside China, you have to be careful. The badge may be the same, but the powertrain may not be. A Tiggo 9 in Australia, Britain, South Africa, or the Middle East can carry different tuning, different battery specs, different fuel claims, and different equipment. So don't buy the name and assume you got the exact China spec hybrid. Check the engine, check the battery, and check the local spec sheet. That is where the truth lives. Still, the bigger point survives. Chery has already moved this strategy from the lab into real SUVs. The exact 48.57 engine may not be in every showroom yet, but the fuel-saving direction is already on sale. That turns this from a science headline into a market threat. Because Toyota can ignore a press release, it can't ignore a cheaper family SUV that makes buyers ask why their trusted hybrid is suddenly not the most efficient answer anymore. And once you see that, the story gets bigger than one Chery model. Because Chery is not the only Chinese brand trying to turn the gas engine into a weapon again. Here's the part that should make Japan and Germany uncomfortable. Chery is not alone. Geely is now pushing a hybrid engine with a thermal efficiency claim of 48.41%, and its latest hybrid fuel run has been tied to a Guinness World Record. So this is not one Chinese company getting lucky with one test bench. It is a pattern. Chinese brands are turning hybrid engines into a battlefield. And that matters because the old story was simple. Japan owned hybrids, Germany owned engineering pride, and China owned cheap EVs. That story is breaking. China already became the country everyone watches for electric cars. But while the world was arguing about batteries, Chinese automakers kept working on the part everyone thought was fading away: the gas engine. Not because they hate EVs, because they understand something very practical. Most of the world is not ready to drive like China. A buyer in a big Chinese city may have chargers, dense roads, short trips, and government support pushing electric cars forward. But a buyer in South Africa, Australia, the Middle East, rural Europe, or half of Latin America has a different problem. Long roads, hot weather, weak charging networks, fuel prices that hurt, and a family that still needs one car to do everything. For that buyer, a pure EV can feel like a risk. A strong hybrid does not. That is why this engine race matters. It is not nostalgia, it is strategy. If Chinese brands can build hybrids that use less fuel, cost less money, and still give long range, they do not need every country to be ready for full EV life. They can sell into the messy middle where most of the planet actually lives. And Chery is built for that messy middle. It is already pushing hard outside China with Chery, Omoda, and JQ. In markets where Chinese cars are welcome, this technology can spread fast. Not necessarily the record engine tomorrow morning, but the same direction. Smaller fuel bills, more electric help, and gasoline engines that spend less time wasting heat. If you're in one of those markets, your answer is simple. You may see Chery's hybrid tech sooner than you think. Just don't let the badge do the thinking for you. Ask which engine it has, what fuel figure it claims, what warranty backs it, and what the real owners are getting after the first year. If you are in the United States, the answer is much colder. You probably will not get this through normal channels, and it is not because the engine cannot work there. It is because modern cars are connected computers, and America is moving to block vehicles and software tied to China and Russia on national security grounds. The software restrictions start with the 2027 model year, and the hardware rules get even tighter after that. So the strange twist is this: the most interesting gasoline engine comeback in years may be happening in the country most famous for killing gasoline cars, and some of the richest buyers in the world may only watch it from the outside. That is the real war now. Not gas versus electric. It is access. Who gets the efficient hybrid first? Who gets priced out? Who gets blocked by politics? And who keeps paying extra at the pump because the better option never made it across the border? That brings the whole video down to one final answer. Chery built the number. China turned it into a movement, but whether it saves you money depends on whether your market lets you touch it. So here's the clean answer. How did Chery do it? It did not find one magic trick. It treated the gas engine like it still had a future, then made it work like a specialist. More expansion, less wasted heat, more hybrid help, more time near its best operating point. That is the formula. Chery did not bring the old gas engine back. It rebuilt the job description. And can you actually buy it? In China, you are closest. Chery already has serious plug-in hybrids on sale, and the Tiggo 9 CDM proves the strategy is real. But the honest correction is important. That showroom SUV is publicly listed with a 44.5% engine, not the exact 48.57 record motor. Outside China, the answer depends on your country. If Chery, Omoda, or JQ are already selling where you live, this kind of hybrid tech could reach you fast. But check the exact local spec before you believe any headline. In the United States, the answer's probably no. At least not the normal way. The politics around Chinese connected cars are now heavier than the engineering. So, what is the verdict? Chery did not kill Toyota. It did not kill EVs. It did not make gasoline king again. It did something sharper. It appealed the gas engine's death sentence. For years, the industry made the story sound settled. EVs were the future, gas was the past, and hybrids were just the bridge. Chery looked at that bridge and asked why nobody was trying to make it stronger. That is why 48.57 matters. Not because your next car will use exactly that number every second you drive. It will not. It is a peak figure, at the engine's best moment. Real roads are messier than test benches. But the ceiling moved. And when the ceiling moves, your wallet eventually feels it. Here is the bonus number that matters more than the headline. 4 liters per 100 kilometers. That is the public depleted battery fuel claim attached to the Tiggo 9 CDM. Treat it carefully because lab cycles are not real life. But compare the direction. A Toyota Highlander hybrid is around 6.7 liters per 100 kilometers. Chery's claim is 4. Over a normal driving year, that gap can mean hundreds of dollars staying out of the fuel pump. That is the part people will actually care about. Not the record, not the press event, not the brand fight, the bill. Because the future of the gas engine will not be decided by nostalgia. It will be decided by cost. If a hybrid SUV gives you long-range, low fuel bills, and no charger anxiety at a normal price, millions of buyers will not care that the internet called the engine dead. They will care that it saves them money. So the honest verdict is this. Toyota still owns the trust. Honda still owns the reputation. The old guard is not finished. But the death sentence just got appealed. And Chery signed it. If this helped you see past the headline, a quick like helps. And seriously, thanks for watching all the way to the end. The gas engine did not come back from the dead. It came back with a calculator. I'll see you in the next one.